Hi, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I love colorful and sparkly makeup. I try to be critical of makeup consumption and consumerism, and I try to resist over-consuming makeup. If that sounds like interesting content to you, then I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and like this video. But one of the ways that I do that is through Shop My Stashes every few months, honestly. I was trying to do every other month, but I kind of fell off for the summer. But today I'm going to refresh my Shop My Stash. I'm thinking of this as like kind of the August, September edition, so late summer. It's already starting to cool off a lot where I live. I'm getting anxious about the end of the summer, but I'm not really ready for fall yet, so I'm trying to think of this as like late summer, and I'm like just deciding for myself that September is part of late summer, and August and September are just gonna be like their own season for me. And I'm gonna try and pick some stuff that makes me feel excited about this particular time of year, and I'm not gonna rush ahead to fall makeup. The last time I filmed this video, it was like mid-May, so I have like a lot of usage on some of these things. Other things, not so much. I definitely didn't wear makeup a lot for like mainly July, but a lot of June as well. Just, I wanted to be outside, and I was going for a lot of walks and didn't want to be like reapplying sunscreen over my makeup. So that was a big part of why I wasn't doing my makeup as often. But I'm gonna start by talking you through what I used, what I didn't use, how I felt about these things that I had in my Shop My Stash starting in May. So for primers, I don't have a lot to report, unfortunately. I barely used these two primers that I had pulled. This is the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer and the Inglot Duraline, which, isn't technically a primer, but it's one of the ways that you can use it. Let me pull this out. Yeah, I don't believe I got a ton of use on this. Part of it was because I bought a new primer, which I'll talk about shortly, and I also am trying to pan another primer, so really that's what I've been focusing on. I don't use primer all the time, so, it makes sense. Throughout the last 3 months of this rotation, I only used this 4 times, and I only used this 2 times. For complexion makeup, I had pulled out these two items that I'm trying to finish. This is the NYX Bare With Me Serum Concealer, and then this is decanted from the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Tinted Moisturizer. I'm close to finishing these, obviously, and they're also in my Makeup Hanging On For Dear Life sort of mini project, which is a bunch of makeup that I'm trying to finish. I will link that video below if you're interested. But these two are in it, so I've really been just focusing on those. That's why I pulled them for the Shop My Stash. And honestly, I'm just going to probably do the same for the next rotation. I didn't use this Halo Glow as much as I expected. Last summer I wore this a lot for like no makeup, but this summer I just found that if I didn't want to be wearing a full face of makeup, I just wouldn't put on anything. So I didn't use this as much as I kind of expected to for the summer season. But that's okay because, I'm getting some things out of my collection. That's my priority right now, and I have made really good progress over the last 3 months. These were my picks for highlighters, and I've also been sort of neglecting these recently in favor of something I'm trying to pan right now. I have really homed in on some makeup that I'm trying to finish for the end of the year, which I will have for a lot of the items in my Shop My Stash this coming rotation. I used this 3 times. This is the Phytosurgeons Spectral Shine in the shade Mirrored Moonlight. And I used this strobe cream 8 times. This is from MAC in the shade Pink Light. And then this is the Wet n Wild Loose Highlighter in the shade I'm So Lit. I mentioned last time that I was planning to press this. It was a loose highlighter, and I did do that this past rotation, and I really love having a pressed version of this. You can see it's just a really nice like shiny sheen. Super nice as a pressed highlighter. I kind of pulled that informally for my Shop My Stash as well. And I used it 6 times, which is a lot more than I was using it when it was loose. I pulled out 2 bronzers for my last rotation. This is the Phytosurgeons bronzer in Golden Warmth, and this is the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer in bronzer. I kind of ended up recently going back to my other Phytosurgence bronzer, which is just like the easiest one to use in my collection, but I've been wanting to get some use on these like warmer toned shades. I got those uses mainly closer to the beginning of this rotation, but I have been reaching back into this one every so often. I am finding it like a little bit harder to use this powder bronzer because I use so much cream blush. I think in general they go over this fine, but it's just powders are always just a little bit more finicky for me. So I used this one 9 times, and then I used this one 19 times. And then I used my Rosy Daybreak shade of this 14 times. But again, this was, you know, a long rotation, so I was being more diligent about using these like earlier in the rotation, and then I just kind of like started using random things. These are what I pulled for blushes. One of them is a lipstick. This is the Merit Signature Lipstick in the shade Baby. I think I'm just going to go ahead and declutter this. It doesn't really work for me as a lipstick. It looks better, I think, as a blush, but it doesn't really fill a role in my collection. I have other things that look very similar to this on the cheeks. So I think I'm gonna pass this along. It's not old, it's barely used. I think I can definitely find somebody who wants this. So, you know, I'm not gonna let it sit in my collection and go bad. And then I think I've also decided to declutter this. This is the e.l.f. Putty Blush in the shade Tahiti. You can see I have quite a big dip in this, and I was kind of hoping to hit pan on this year, but I mentioned last time I don't love the way this sits on my skin. I find it a bit drying, and I found this past rotation, I was still having that problem, and if it's doing that to me in the summer, then it's not gonna work at any time of year because I have very dry skin. So I'm ready to let go of this. I already decluttered it once to my mom and she passed it back to me. So I think I made the right call originally. And now that I have a bigger blush collection than I did then, I feel like I really don't need it because while I really do love this color blended out on my cheeks, I now have things that have the same effect. So I'm ready to let this one go. It's pretty old, so I don't think I'll pass this along. I'll probably just empty this out, and then I really like these putty blush containers for decanting other things, so that will be useful. And in terms of numbers, I only wore this 4 times during that 3-month rotation, and Baby, I only wore once before deciding that I didn't need it. It's not bad on the cheeks like I mentioned, but this just blends out to a neutral pink, and I just have other neutral pink blushes. Including this one, Condensate. I think they look very similar, blended out, like sheared out on the cheeks. This is from Phytosurgence, and this is one of my favorite blush formulas, so I'd always just rather have a shade in my favorite formula. And I used this one 11 times during the rotation. And then I also pulled this reddish shade Swelter, which I used 6 times. I've been really loving this for the summer. 6 times doesn't sound like much, but given how kind of bold and vibrant this blush shade is, it's a relatively high number. So I really, really have been enjoying this one. And then Condensate is something I can use any time of year, but it's nice. It goes with almost any look. I also pulled out this glitter topper eyeshadow from LA Girl. This is the shade Hollow Glam. I have to say I didn't use this much this rotation. Sorry, so that's not a very exciting update, but I do love this eyeshadow. I just didn't reach for it all that often. Okay, and then for lip shades, I did finish one of the things that I had pulled, which was just like a neutral pink gloss from Essence. So I did finish that. That was my goal for the rotation, and I was really close back in May. I also pulled out one other lipstick, which is, again, in my Makeup Hanging On for Dear Life series. That's just floating around in a bag, so I didn't pull it out, but I used it a lot, and I'm continuing to use it a lot. That's the shade Adobe from Kaleidos. But these are the 3 other ones that were in my Shop My Stash. So I have Dune from Kaleidos, Spicy from Tower 28, and Vermilion from Merit. I don't keep numbers on my lip products for the most part, but I used Dune a good few times, like more often than usual. I used Spicy probably not as much as I would have liked, given that it's such a summery shade, but it's very easy to throw on, so I got decent use out of it. And then Vermilion, I wanted to kind of see how I felt about it. I actually didn't end up wearing it on its own at all, but I wore it a good few times underneath a more like brick kind of neutral red shade. This is like a really, really vibrant orange red, and I really like it underneath a brick color to sort of like, they combine to more of like a warm neutral red. So I have been finding a way to make this work, even though in theory I'd prefer to just have my perfect red lipstick, but I kind of, in my current collection, have to layer things to get that color, which ultimately isn't the end of the world. And for now, I'd rather just get use on the things I have by layering them into the shades I want. I wore this to a wedding actually in July, which, definitely not in its most vibrant orange form, but underneath a more nude lipstick, I thought it was kind of a nice, like classic red kind of look. So that's it for updates on my last rotation. Now I'm going to pick out some products for the new rotation. Also, I should mention off the bat that, as with last time, you're gonna see some new stuff in my collection. I will talk a little bit about those things as I go through, give you some, first thoughts about new things that I've picked up in the last 3 months. I've mentioned this before, but I ended a no-buy back at the end of March. April, May, and June, I was buying a lot of makeup. I've been doing a lot better since I started my sort of current low buy, which I'm calling an optional no buy. I will leave the video below where I talk about that in more detail if you're interested, but I've been doing a lot better since then. Most of the new makeup that you're gonna see was purchased in June, but yeah, disclaimer there's still a lot of new makeup since I filmed my last one in May, but like, we're getting better. We're on the right track, I think. I think the optional no-buy mindset has been helpful so far, and the exceptions I've made have been for like new launches or like limited edition collabs. That was kind of the idea behind the optional no-buy, was that I could make exceptions in cases like that. So far it's been going okay. So keeping up the current trend, I bought a new e.l.f. primer. Almost all my primers are from e.l.f. I did get the Jelly Pop Dew Primer because it was like relaunched this past summer, and Sarah Rose really loved this, so I got it kind of based on her recommendation. People do compare it to the Power Grip, although a lot of people like this one better. Personally, I don't love the Power Grip, so maybe it was dumb for me to try this. I was kind of hoping it would like do the gripping primer thing for me in a way that I couldn't really get this one to do. Was it a good purchase? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out if I can make it work. These are definitely like finicky, these kinds of primers. I am gonna pull this out for the next rotation and like keep playing around with it every so often. But what I'm really focusing on is this Liquid Poreless Putty Primer, which is in my like makeup hanging on for dear life. I'm really close to finishing it. I'm below this line now. And then for complexion, I'm gonna be totally boring, and I'm just gonna keep these two in my rotation, these same ones that I had in the last 2 rotations. I'm so close to finishing them. And I'm hoping in the next 2 months or so, I will finish both of these. If that happens, I have other things that I will rotate in, especially things that I'm trying to finish. Okay, so I have a few updates in my highlighter category. I almost forgot my new pressed version of this one. So these are the same highlighter, but I did do, as I mentioned, a pressing session. I pressed this one, as well as these 2 loose highlighters I had from Crow and Pebble. This is the shade Weird Sister, and this is the shade Ceridwen. It's more like a blush lighter shade for me. And I pressed all of these. I have been getting more usage on them than I did, But these two I still haven't really pulled out very consciously. This one, honestly, I might declutter in the near future because it's kind of a difficult shade for me. I don't know if you can see that there, but it does, like, it's quite pigmented and dark for a highlighter for me. And I don't love like a super shiny blush. And then the other thing that's new is this Rituel de Fille cream highlighter in the shade Borealis. This is from the collab with Andromeda from Instagram. I love the color green. I couldn't resist this collab. And I have so much green eyeshadow, but I was really, really intrigued by the green highlighter and I really like it so far. I'll swatch it for you. I wore this for the first time today, and when I first put it on my cheek, it looks quite green like that. When I ultimately like kind of sheared it down with a sponge, which tends to be how I use cream highlighter, it did turn more into just like a neutral kind of glow. It's versatile in that you can build it up to be quite green, and it also can kind of shear down into just like this really subtle, like people won't necessarily notice that you're wearing colorful green highlighter, but like you will. And it's just like this little touch when it catches the light in the right way. This is actually looking really green right now, even though it's sheared down. I hope you can see that. Part of me feels like I could just get away with every day for the rest of my life just wearing this green highlight because it has that like subtlety to it. I'm excited to play around with that a lot more. I definitely want to pull this out. I really like it so far. The formula is really nice. It's very smooth and sheeny. It's not sparkly at all. So excited about this. So excited. And the shade name and the concept of the whole collection was just incredible. A love letter to the color green. I love green so much, and I thought it was so beautifully done. And other than that, I'm pretty much just gonna be focusing on Lunch Money. This is one that I'm trying to finish this year. Between those two, I think that will be enough to focus on. I just realized I forgot to put Mirrored Moonlight in my shot of highlighters, which goes to show how much I forget about this one. So sorry to this little guy, but he's not going in the current Shop My Stash. Let's see, for bronzer, I am gonna go ahead and pull back my Rosy Daybreak bronzer. This is just my go-to shade. It wasn't in my last Shop My Stash, but I did find myself ultimately reaching for it a lot. I'm not gonna pull my other Phytosurgence bronzer, and I think I wanna focus a little bit more on this Physicians Formula one. I'm probably not gonna like force myself to use it, but you know, given that it's like a really summery shade, I think this is the right time to be pulling this out. This one is warm as well, but this one I think is a little bit more intense than the Phytosurgence one. So I think I'm gonna pull this one and try and get a few more uses on that before the end of the summer. And that will be all for bronzer. Blush is where I have gone a little bit ham this year, and also in the last few months specifically. My blush collection, as I show it in these videos, also does fluctuate a little bit because I have certain things that I like sometimes call a lipstick and sometimes call a blush. And then there's also a couple of things that I've recluttered throughout this year since I started making Shop My Stash videos, so just an FYI there. But my blush collection is much larger than it's ever been right now, and a lot of these I did pick up in the last 3 months. So since my last Shop My Stash, I picked up this ColourPop Super Shock blush in the shade Virtual Reality. I've barely even gotten the chance to play around with this because I got so many new blushes, so yeah, shame on me for that. Can't tell you all that much about this one. I love this one, which I also got in June. This is the e.l.f. Camo Liquid Blush in the shade Peach Perfect. Love this so much so far. Should I swatch these? Maybe I'll swatch some. This is just a really, really light peach shade. This ColourPop blush was a lot more orange than I hoped it would be, so that's part of why I haven't used it all that much, because it kind of looks a lot like my other sort of like terracotta blush shades, including this one, Roosevelt, which I was working on in a project for a lot of this year, and I was just kind of getting really sick of it. So that's the reason I haven't pulled this one out too much, unfortunately. It's a really nice formula though. I really wanted to try the Super Shock formula because I had this one, which was decluttered to me from my mom. This is Between the Sheets, and you can see it's really dried out and hard panned. And I liked that because I well, especially in the past, I liked a much more subtle blush look, and this was really easy to get a subtle blush look from. But I was really curious what this formula was like when it wasn't dried out. That's why I picked this one up. When I went on the ColourPop website, there were very few shades of this. This I got on sale actually for just a few dollars, and it looked like maybe they were gonna discontinue this, so I kind of jumped on it. So that's that. What else here is new? These two powder blushes are both from Dandelions Co. Dandelions is an indie brand that focuses on eyeshadow, and they are known for their matte formula. They recently launched powder blushes, so I ended up picking these up basically on launch because I was really excited to try these. I'm a big fan of Dandelions Co., even though I haven't tried a ton from them. I have a few of their eyeshadows, and I like the matte formula from what I've tried, although I don't know it very well. But the way people describe it is sort of like powdery and buildable. I've also heard it compared to Viseart, which I've never tried, but like that's exactly what I look for in powder products. So that's a big part of why I was excited to try their blushes. So far, I really like these. I think like a lot of indie brands, when it comes to both blushes and matte eyeshadows, they can sometimes be like too pigmented to the point where they're difficult to work with, especially when it comes to the cheeks. I was again really intrigued by the way people described Dandelion's formula. So far I like it. I find these really easy to apply on the cheeks. It's really hard to over apply them. And I think part of that is because of the shades I chose. Probably part of it is also the formula. The other thing I love about Dandelions Co., and this is something I've observed mainly from afar, just looking at their website, but they have the most interesting, nuanced shades of matte eyeshadows, and that completely translates to their blushes. The blush range that they dropped was huge for a blush launch, and they had these really kind of offbeat shades, a lot of purpley and mauve tones, a lot of reds. This one I was so curious to try. This is the shade Coquina, I think that's how you say it. And it's like that really light beige that you see in like Asian beauty a lot of the time. You know, that was a shade I really wanted to try, and when I saw it in this formula, I was really excited about it. This is the shade Conch, which is just a peachy pink, also really beautiful. They're light shades, so that's a big part of it, but they're super, super effortless on my skin tone, especially this one, which this one barely even looks like you're wearing blush. It's just like the most subtle kind of shaping that it adds to your face. Those are my first impressions of that, and these are the 4 blushes that I purchased in the last 3 months. It's definitely a lot for me. I'm a little bit overwhelmed by options in my blush collection right now. But, you know, it's also been fun to explore some new kinds of shades and formulas. So as I mentioned, I've been having some like decision overwhelm when it comes to choosing blushes, and I'm kind of feeling that way right now. I do kind of want to pull out this shade. This is Cumulus from AOA Studio. And I actually decluttered this from my collection because I was having a really hard time with the liquid formula. However, since I started using this e.l.f. liquid formula, It's sort of the first liquid blush I got to work, and so it made me wonder if I could like figure out how to use this in a way that is more correct. And then also weirdly, I've been hearing a lot of people talking about this blush and this shade in the last few weeks, like as a summery kind of blush shade. And I had always kind of thought of this as a wintry shade, weirdly, because it's pink. Yeah, now I definitely see the like watermelon vibes coming through here. Oh my god, my cat is being a gremlin. So anyway, I'm gonna try this, pull this out for the Shop My Stash, but I might try it once and then be like, no, I can't do this. I'm definitely gonna be focusing a lot on ColourPop Layover because it's in my products that I wanna finish. Another one that I want to just have around is this shade Bespoke from Essence. I had this in my deck of panning, and funnily enough, I found that I was really enjoying like topping this over other things. When I would have like a more neutral shade on like this, I would put this on and I found that it just like added a little bit of liveliness, which is so surprising to me. I think of this as a brown blush, and when I look at it, it looks very neutral. But weirdly, when I just take a little bit of it, I think it has this like red quality that comes out and sort of like brightens things. I don't know what it is, but I was really liking it. So I'm gonna pull this out to like keep in my everyday makeup. I think I would also like to pull this out. It's a really nice end of summer shade, and I would like to get to know it better, so I'll give you another swatch just to keep the color story going. This formula feels really nice to swatch, so I think I should pull that out as well. That's 4, but I don't know, I think maybe I should keep Swelter around. It's just such a perfect summer shade, and I want to make the most of it before the fall. It's so delicious. So yeah, this is a large selection, but I think it will, help me stay within the Shop My Stash rather than opening it up to my whole collection and then getting even more overwhelmed by options. Okay, my lip collection remains overwhelming and in need of a declutter. I do have 2 nude shades that are in my makeup hanging on for dear life, so I'm focusing a lot on those. Both of them are just like in pockets or bags, and I didn't pull them out for today. But those are gonna be the main things that I'm focusing on for like everyday shades. I'd like to pull out some more like late summer specific shades, including this one. This is C.A. Love from ColourPop. This is a staple for me in late summer and fall. So I'm definitely gonna pull that out. I'd like to pull some kind of bolder red shade to try and do like 1 or 2 looks with it. That's Cherry from e.l.f. It's more of a blue toned / neutral red. This is Pepper, which is more of an orange toned red. I love this shade, and I find the formula a little bit hard for a bold shade like this because it doesn't set down. I heard somebody speaking really highly of these recently, and it kind of made me want to pull them out. This is the Maybelline Super Stay Matte Ink in the shade Dancer, which is very similar to this orangey shade. This is definitely my kind of red. Like, I like warm toned reds. These ones are very much on the vibrant side though. This is Merit Vermilion. Interesting. You can see it's very similar, but it's more muted. And this is my least favorite of all my orangey reds. So maybe that's why. And then this is definitely more of a blue toned red, so less of those late summer vibes, but this is Dahlia from Kaleidos. So a little bit darker as well and a little bit cooler toned. I've also this guy has been sort of living in my brain rent-free. This is the shade Amazonian from Maybelline, and I haven't pulled this out in ages. This is such a good fall color. Maybe I will save that for the next rotation actually. It's very fall appropriate and it's also very close to this one, but I prefer to have this one in right now. As for the reds, I think what I'm gonna do is pull out the Maybelline as kind of like a warm toned option, and I do want to test out this e.l.f. formula again. So I'm also gonna pull out this blue toned e.l.f. shade in the shade Cherry. Probably only use each of these like one time throughout the next rotation, but you know, that's fine. That's kind of the purpose of these Shop My Stashes, is to pull out things that I'm not like reaching for organically. So it'll be just these and the nudes that I'm panning. And then actually I will make sure to keep Spicy accessible as well, just because it's so very appropriate for the season. So here we have my Shop My Stash selection for August and September, minus this ugly decanted tinted moisturizer, and minus my nude lipsticks. As you can see, there's a lot of red in general, red vibes for the end of the summer, some brown, some toasty shades, and then some random green, which will be fun. I'm pretty excited to have a curated Shop My Stash again. The Shop My Stash kind of always deteriorates over time and things get put back in different places and everything becomes kind of a mess again. So it's nice to have, again, a sort of capsule collection of makeup that I can come back to again and again over the next month or two. I hope to see you back here for another Shop My Stash soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye!